Welcome to the Dynamics Hotdish, the podcast where Ashley Steiner, Allie Nelson, and Liz McLennan dish up the latest news and insights about Dynamics and the Power Platform. Join us to explore business applications and low-code development with tips, tricks, and real-world experiences. So grab a seat at the table and let's dig in.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dynamics Hotdish. If you haven't already followed us on social media, go ahead and do that on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram. We actually have a TikTok account now that we'll be adding more content to, so you can find us on all those platforms at Dynamics Hotdish. And this week, we have something really exciting to bring to you. We are doing our first ever top 10 or top anything. As you know, we're in the middle of our admin series, and what we decided to share with you this week is our top 10 favorite tips to share with admins for working in the system. So this is really exciting, and we'll kind of go around and share some of these tips with you all. And as always, if you have any tips to add that you would love to share, go ahead and send those to us in the comments or the discussion on social media. So who wants to get started with the favorite tip? We didn't number these, by the way, so they're not in any particular order. So we're not starting at like number 10, but we have 10 of them.
Were we doing round robin instead of all at once?
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think that makes
okay.
sense. Yeah. I'm going to say it's 10-ish because I think we each brought 3.
You had a bonus
probably have
one,
like bonus
so.
ones, I think. So okay, it was my bonus that we were going with. Oh, okay.
You were the only one that did a bonus.
Well, cuz
I made up an extra one today, so we have some extras.
Okay. I agreed with your bonus one, Ashley, so I'm fine with that being the bonus one, but I'd like to hear Allie's too.
Oh, I was going to say, Liz and I voted you lost, Allie. We're going with mine.
I think we should also explain why we're drinking champagne on camera in case anyone missed the bonus episode the week before. Right?
Oh, yeah, our 100th episode.
Yes.
We are still celebrating 100 episodes. And we will continue to celebrate, and we'll see how this goes with us sipping champagne, and if at any point we need to cut each other off.
The goal is to finish the whole bottle by the end of the episode. Just kidding. I wish everyone could see the faces that I just got at that.
I'm going to lose that challenge.
No thanks.
So to get into the list, I think the easiest one to start with, and we can go round robin, is that all 3 of us had brought up the XRM toolbox, right? I think that as an admin, it was a lifesaver. Obviously, as a consultant, I think that there are a lot of ways that we use it as well. But as an admin, you only have so much time in the day to get your job done. And Liz, I think you're the one who said this to me once, and I know I've heard it 100 times over, but I think you were one of the first ones where you were like, if it's taking you a long time to do something in the system, there's probably an XRM toolbox app for you to that will make it faster. And so I always kept that in the back of my mind. Like if I'm doing something repetitive, like over and over, I bet you I can do it in the XRM toolbox.
At least check it, right? Like if you're like, this is stupid, why does it not work this way out of the box? It's probably because there's some other way to do it. So
yeah, like somebody's already automated it.
Yeah.
So,
and to not be afraid of it too. Like I know so many new people, consultants or admins that are like afraid of trying to connect and open it. I remember that. It took you years. And I was too as an admin, and then as a consultant, I finally figured it out because I had to like keep up. But don't be afraid of it. Like just try it and check it out.
Well, and just try it in a dev environment. Like if you're finding that you're doing something in prod, well, just hook it up to your sandbox and ruin it and reset it if you have to. It's a perfect way to try something out. But yeah, I agree with that, Liz. I was terrified. I kept always telling you like, no, I don't know how to use it. And it's changed my life since I've started using it. So
Ashley, I think you totally just dropped a bonus tip in there too of always do something in the dev environment. Don't do it in prod for the first time. So
that you stole one of my tips. That was one on my list. Well, now we're starting with that one, and then we're coming back to XRM Toolbox.
Go ahead, Liz. We're starting with you with that one, and we'll come back to Toolbox.
So, yes, my tip was don't build in prod. Build in a lower environment. Build in dev, sandbox. It's free. I don't care what size of company you are, you should have at least one lower environment that you start with. And I added that because last year at Summit, I was working the tech medic desk, and a guy walked up saying like, asking for help, and it was in prod. And it kind of occurred to me that, yeah, at smaller organizations, it still happens, and it shouldn't. So.
Well, and to that point, so I'm going to add on to it, but 100% agree, is if you're doing something, and let's say you do have 3 environments, because if you're working in managed solutions, you probably want to have 3. If you're working in unmanaged, which is just fine, if you're an end customer, do what works best for you, is if something goes wrong in a lower environment, don't move it to production and just think it'll be better. Like, do it right and lower, and then move it to production.
That's where you test, because you're not impacting anyone. Yeah.
Well, and not only configuration though, so you're talking about solutions, like, yeah, of course you always want to work in your solution in a lower environment and move it up, but also for like data changes, and this might tie back to our XRM toolbox too, but like if you have to bulk update a bunch of data, maybe you don't want to do that in prod for the first time. Maybe you want to try it in a lower environment, just because if you screw up, then you can purge or refresh or copy down data from your prod environment or something, but that way you're not messing with your production data. So like literally anything that you want to do in production, try it in a lower environment first, because then you can always undo it or redo it.
Yep.
Agreed.
Allie, I think that's a nice segue into your first tool you wanted to talk about for XRM Toolbox, right?
Sure.
The data transporter?
Yeah, I wanted... Exactly. Yeah. Perfect. So the data transporter is one that I wanted to bring up because I'll just give a highlight of the tool to start us off. But what the data transporter does in XRM Toolbox is allows you to move records between different environments, which means that they will keep their GUIDs the same across all those different environments. And I'm sure we've all ran into issues where you have like a business rule that's associated with a record, and then you try to move it to an environment and it doesn't work anymore. And it's like, well, why isn't this working? Oh, because we manually created that record now in our other environment. So they have different GUIDs, and things like business rules and workflows and processes like that are typically tied to record by GUID. So if you're creating all that data separately in each different environment, those types of things aren't going to work if you move them up in solutions. And then you have to keep a whole list of all the manual steps you have to do when you're migrating solutions between environments. And inevitably things get missed and it just becomes a huge pain. I know Liz is nodding a lot with this, so I know that she's experienced everything that I'm talking about. So just like as a best practice, use that data transporter to make records, like business units, teams, miscellaneous data, just everything then will match between your environments, and it'll make moving your solutions a whole lot easier.
Any like master data, right? Because I think it's pretty common to build custom tables to store like lists of master data that maybe is not living in an option set because you want it in a table instead. And then you're referencing that in places. I'm thinking views too. Like a lot of times view filter criteria is referencing that as a filter. And if, again, it's named exactly the same thing, but the GUID is different, it breaks all of that and you have to manually fix it all.
Mm-hmm. Views is a great example too, because you do end up having filters of like, maybe I don't want to filter off of this business unit or this team, or I want to exclude our internal account or something like that. So you do end up using filters on views a lot with data. So that's a really good example. All right, you guys, what's the next XRM Toolbox tip we have?
I'll go through my 3 since Liz, we started with your
that works.
Develop in production, and then we'll just keep going in a circle. So I brought up 3 XRM Toolbox tools that one that I'm currently using, and then 2 that I feel like I have saved my life, and I'll try to wrap these up pretty quickly. But the first one is the model driven app copier. So I always say don't if you're going to like completely change the out of the box apps, like the sales hub, the customer service hub, those kinds of model driven apps that Microsoft gives you, I say create your own. I think it's kind of, I think it has downstream negative impacts if you fully customize what they give you. And so what a pain in the butt it was to have to like recreate these like full apps, and you want to make them look as close to the sales hub as possible, or you have the same app that you want multiple people to use, but you just have different forms and views in it. terrible experience to have to recreate every single one of those every single time. And if you're an admin, if you're a consultant, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So the model-driven app copier has saved my life and saved so much time, because it just copies an app as is, and it puts all the same things in there, and then you can just go edit what's there versus creating from scratch brand new. So that one is the most recent find that I've found.
That just made me think of another bonus tip. Like, you're talking about preserving out of the box model-driven apps and always like copying, but that would apply to anything out of the box, like security roles, views, forms. You copy it all. You don't touch any of the out of the box stuff.
Nope.
Because you never know when you need to go back to it.
Correct. Or what Microsoft's going to change to it that you're going to want to then, like, your changes have then, you know, made an issue with it or something. So,
but one question I'll ask you guys, because I have been asked this before, but and I'm curious what your answer is, but if you're not using the out-of-the-box Microsoft forms, you know, we say that Microsoft can push changes to it. How do you know what changes they push to those forms if you're never using them then?
Someone should be testing the update.
Yeah, I would say you have to keep you have to just stay up to date on the updates.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I always have an environment where I'm using, like, I always have a trial, or I have something where I'm using the out-of-the-box stuff to kind of find out what's coming and what's new and what's different. Or as an admin, I always had my own admin app that had all of the out-of-the-box stuff where I could go in and look at things and test them out. Because sometimes I'm like, oh, there's an issue. Is it with my personal form? Is like that working on Microsoft's form? You know what I mean? If it's an out-of-the-box issue. So I feel like as an admin, you kind of always just keep an eye on it somewhere.
I love that. And I love the admin app too.
A lot of work is the answer to your question, Allie. There's no easy way to do it. The other two I'll just quickly run through are probably two of my favorite XRM Toolbox apps. The first one is the recycle bin. If you delete something in Dynamics, it's gone forever, right? That's what you tell all of your users because you don't want them to delete something accidentally. Why didn't you take away their delete privileges? I don't know. You just missed it. You forgot. Maybe
another tip.
Yeah. However, you never know what can happen, and somebody always ends up deleting something.
Admins make mistakes too.
Also, yes, that is 100% true. Admins make mistakes. So the recycle bin can save you. If you have auditing turned on, the recycle bin can go back and look at what you have or like what you've deleted and restore it. It's not perfect. If you think about relationships, like you can't restore an account that has a primary contact where the contact has now been deleted as well. So think about, also think about like your, relationship, your cascading rules for like, if you delete a record, does it delete everything else? You know, things like that. So think about that. But the recycle bin, I would say as a whole, I could talk for probably 20 minutes about what you need to consider with the recycling bin. Come to one of my sessions that I do the XRM Toolbox at almost every conference that there is. I do one, love to talk about it, but I'll just say at a high level, that's the recycle bin. The other one is the bulk data updater. I think that we kind of talked about that in the beginning here, is if you have like a lot of data that you need to update en masse, I would certainly use that, especially if you have like workflows or plugins that trigger on data updates. Using the data, like turning those off and running the bulk updater, you can get through hundreds of thousands of records in a very limited amount of time. Like I would say much shorter than if you're trying to do 250 at a time with, you know, your advanced finds, which don't really exist anymore. So how do you mass update data in Dynamics? I don't even know if there's a way to do it. So, because I just use the bulk data updater. So that's my recommendation for mass updating data.
And that one too, actually, I think comes with the bonus of the like touch a record, right? Where you don't actually have to change something. But if you like update a business rule or a workflow and you want it to run, you can just like quote unquote touch the record so it runs. Yeah. Love that one. That one's great.
Yeah. So Liz, what about you and your XRM Toolbox ones that you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, so I have 3. The first one is one I like to run on a system that's been in use for a while. So attribute usage. So it tells you how often the fields are being used on your form. So if they're optional fields and the client or your internal user is complaining like, I have all these fields and I never use them, I don't need them, I don't know why they're there, it's really easy to run that on a per table basis and get that usage report to help clean up your forms and evaluate what you need in the system. Because over time things change. So you might have thought you needed it when you deployed it, but maybe you don't anymore. My next one is user settings. So out of the box as an admin, you can't set default user settings. And so in the XRM Toolbox, you can. And I think that's just a nice thing to do for user setup, is to not have to ask them or train them to go update their personal settings, but to do it for them. And my third one is the personal view or personal attribute manager. So another thing you can't do out of the box as an admin is view all the personal stuff, views or charts or dashboards that have been built, and then maybe shared with people. So maybe someone builds a lot, they leave, and then you don't have access to it, and you need to go in and either clean it up or reassign it or whatever. There's several tools in the XRM Toolbox that allow you to do that.
Those are great. We just cranked through so many XRM Toolbox tips in a short period of time. I love that so much.
But they each only count as one tip per person, so...
Yeah, we could do a whole episode and each come to the plate with probably double-digit XRM Toolbox tools that we used just within the last month. I'm constantly using it. Liz, the one thing I will say about the user settings, you and I did a session at Summit last year on the XRM Toolbox, and I remember us saying, oh, we wish it showed us what they currently have, and somebody in the audience was like, it does, you just click on their name. And so they're constantly making changes and advancements and things like that, updates to these tools as well. So over time you'll see that new things are added, but also we were doing a session on it and somebody was taught us something. The Toolbox is just awesome and everyone should use it. And that was probably one of the coolest experiences I would say I had at a conference, where they were like, it does now. So it was fun.
I feel like I always learn something when I lead a session too.
Always.
It's someone has an answer that you don't have, and that's great to get that engagement.
Yeah, absolutely.
And truthfully too, with XRM Toolbox, some of it can be kind of hard to navigate sometimes because they are built by all different people. So it's not the same experience, And I feel like there's always buttons that you're not sure what they do until someone tells you oh yeah, just do this, this, this. So even if it's stuff that we use all the time, constantly learning from other people, things that they've managed to find and use. So click the buttons in a dev environment, try it out.
So Allie, what is your next tip for admins after the XRM Toolbox?
Okay, so we're going to take a hard pivot on this one, but my next two are kind of related to each other. But the first one that I want to talk about, I'll say, controversy, is just use the Maker portal. That's my
Why
tip.
is this still a tip that we need to share? Who hasn't switched? Seriously, it came out
a lot of people.
A lot of admins,
I don't get
I
it.
will say as well. I would say a lot of admins, internal. I think consultants maybe have adopted it a little bit more, but definitely admins are still using it. Sorry, Allie.
Yeah, for sure. And
keep going.
No, you're good. And I think it is because it's familiar, right? We're all creatures of habit as well. So when you've been working in the same thing for 10 years and then it changes, and the Maker portal was kind of a slow rollout, right? They rolled it out and people tried using it and they're like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. It doesn't work. And I'm going to totally give a shout out to Heidi here as well, because when I was prepping for this, I found a video she did 3 years ago on this from what the Maker portal does versus what the classic UI does. And she had a section in there that says if you need to do these things, go to the classic. And all but 2 of those things have now been transferred over to the Maker portal. So
not everything has, though.
So not everything, but most of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on her
that's
list.
Awesome.
So I think
that's Heidi Newhouser, by the way, for everyone. I'm guessing that's what you mean, Heidi. Okay. And we'll link to that video, Allie, in our show notes. So for those of you listening, we'll make sure that we link to that.
Yeah, but so really a lot of the capabilities that you used to do in the classic UI, the old UI, are now in the Maker portal, plus some cool new things. So I just recommend getting in there. It's easier to edit forms. It's easier to edit views. It's more user-friendly. I found it's easier to teach new people how to work in the Maker portal as well. It's much more intuitive. It's click and drag style. It doesn't freeze when you publish things, which is amazing.
It's way faster.
It's way faster. And I'm sure we've all encountered that of publish and then you have to click wait on your browser because it freezes. So
well, I swear they've made the classic interface like slower. It seems worse than it's ever been with that. If you have to go back and do something there. Yeah.
I agree. I think that they're intentionally making it terrible.
Yeah. I have heard the same thing about new people learning, though. Like, I remember training a bunch of new consultants in on the Maker Portal right when it was new, and I was personally struggling with it because it was new to me, but they were like, this is really intuitive and really easy. And there's just a lot more design features, or like, I don't even know how you call this, like shortcuts. Like, there's copy and paste, and there's like save as, and things that you don't have in the classic interface that will save you a ton of time on your like forms and views and configuration work in there.
Agreed.
Yep.
Yeah.
100% agree. All right. I know we could keep talking on and on about this one. I will toss it back to Liz. I think you're next again, but there you go.
I think it's Ashley, isn't
it me?
Ashley's next.
I can't remember. I'll go. I don't mind.
Because I started. Yeah, Ashley, you're next.
Okay, yeah. Ashley, you're next.
Okay, so my second tip after the toolbox is get an ISV. So use ISV tools. I shouldn't say have as many ISV tools as you possibly can and that your company is willing to pay for. So I also, Dynamics is great. I think Microsoft has added a lot in there, but there are just some things that may be custom to your business or the way that you do business versus other companies. And Microsoft has intentionally not made, it has made, I should say it this way, has made Dynamics flexible so that it can be used among different industries, different types of business, different sizes, things like that. So if you have a unique process or something to you that you don't want to build out, use an ISV. My particular favorite one, and I'm going to throw a shout out here because I love the folks at Data 8. They're based out of the UK, and they're awesome. And so it's a data duplication tool, I would say, is kind of where it started, but it's also data validation. You can do address matching. You can validate that an email is even a valid email. I mean, just anything and everything data related. And when we talked about like what an admin does, data is a huge part of your job. And if you can automate as much of that as possible, you should. And so I recommend fully the Data 8 folks. That tool, I would say, is probably the best of the data tools that I've seen. I know there's a lot out there. I'm not saying that they're not great as well. Just with my experience, so I would say if you can't find what you're looking for in the XRM toolbox, something is still taking a lot of time, go out into AppSource, find an ISV, find something that's going to help make your life easier. And you can justify the cost, right? You can easily say, well, here's how many hours per month I'm spending on this, and here's what I'm not getting done. You can easily justify the cost for ISVs and things like that. So look for ISVs. They're awesome.
I'm glad you mentioned AppSource. That was going to be my, like, hey, dumb question.
Same.
I know where to go look, but, like, if someone's never looked for an ISV before, where is a comprehensive list? So I'm glad you brought up AppSource.
So I will say that AppSource is a great list, but it doesn't have everybody. If you have to have an app in AppSource to be listed there. So there are lists. I know, like, Dynamics World, MS Dynamics World, I think that's MSDW. They have a list of ISVs. Or just reach out to your partner. Partners always have a list of ISVs that they like to work with, or reach out to us. Or go to a conference. ISVs are everywhere. So, so I would say even for your unique experience, that's why ISVs exist, is because of those unique one-off situations. So.
And like, truthfully, with ISVs, these are businesses that spent a lot of time developing a very specific piece of software. So if you're thinking about building something and it's going to take a lot of time, go to the ISVs first and see if there's something out there, because it may offset your cost and time for trying to build it custom. So that's a great one.
Right away.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
All right, Liz, your last one.
Yeah. So I'm expanding on it a little from when I sent the list over. So form design tips, but also view design tips. So I'm comboing them because I think a lot of the core principles are true for both. So my first thing about it is keep things consistent. I don't know if it's because I'm just super detail oriented and like anal retentive, but it drives me crazy when you have like all these different forms that put the same kind of repetitive fields in the different spots. So like, for example, the owner field. is on pretty much every form you have in the system. And I think it should be consistently located in the same place. Like, that is one I like to put in the header, because you can click the assign to button. You don't have to click into the field to edit it. But like name of the record, if you're looking at like account to contact, it could be like phone numbers and email and address. Like, I just like things to be consistent. Same with your views. Like, let's say you have 5 different views for accounts and there's, 5 of the same columns on a view. Why are you reordering it like for each one? Like, again, start with the save as. You can add and remove the things that you are different and unique to each one, but I think the things that they have in common should be placed in the same spot. And then my other tip for views specifically is that if you have a lookup column that isn't a lookup to the table that the view is for, don't put it first, because people click there and then it takes them to the record and they're like, why am I on the user record? And it's like, no, you're trying to open up a contact right now. Like, just click over to the right more. But yeah,
trying to
I know
explain
you've
that
both
to somebody is
experienced
so not worth the pain. Just put the right one, or just make it not a clickable field, right? Like, sure, have a different column first, but like, as long as it's not clickable, it's so
just not clickable to the wrong record.
Right, exactly. So not worth it. On the same note, Liz, as you were saying, like, I'm also a little OCD. I say a lot OCD, and I hate it because out of the box, Microsoft like titles their sections sometimes in all caps, and then other times not in caps, all caps. And so I don't know what it is about me, but it all has to be the same. So like, even things like that, like, just shows that you've put thought into the system. Nobody will ever notice that you did it, but they will notice that you didn't do it.
And it doesn't matter which way you decide to go. It's just make all the sections, all the labels consistent. One or the other. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Ashley. That drives me nuts too. I think the other...
It bothers me so much, but it does.
It's just like...
consistency.
I don't know. It looks prettier. Yeah. And I guess the other tip I have for the form is don't put fields that you edit frequently in the header, because the header's a little bit harder to get to. You have to drop it down. It's an extra click. So it's great for like reference fields. But if like, I wouldn't put a highly used field up in the header. That's my
and people never know to go there for it either.
No,
that's the other thing. Is they're like, I don't know where this is, and then you say the header and they're like, but I can't edit it, and it's confusing for people. So don't do it.
I did that in a demo this week. I was like, oh, I could have sworn this field was here, and literally the client was like, it's up there in the header, and I'm like, oh gosh, like, I should have moved, like, I rookie move. So
it was probably there by default, though.
It was there by default, and I just didn't move it because why would I? It was just a demo. So yeah. All right,
that's all I have.
Anything else you want to add? Okay. Allie, let's go to your last tip. What do you have for us?
Okay, I changed it from when we originally planned this, and I thought of a different one. So surprise, everybody. No,
is this the one that you wanted to use as a bonus tip, but now we're not letting you?
Yeah, and maybe we'll get to it. I swear we're through like 75 tips already in this episode, but like 10 big ones. But anyway, the one that I want to share is using different types of grids in views for different purposes, right? So we're familiar with just the regular read-only grid, and you can change things to be editable and use the editable grid, which means you can just tab through really quickly and update records without actually having to update the record. And now there's new views that are Power Apps grid control views that look and feel 1,000,000 times better than that old editable grid. So I highly recommend trying those, and maybe switch over your current editable grids to the Power Apps grid control editable version. Instead of like using a drop down to change yes, no fields to yes or no, it shows up in your view as a toggle. So your users literally just have to click it once and it toggles. And what's really cool about it is it lets you pick colors for your choice fields. So if you have option sets with multiple options, you can go into the settings and set colors, and they show up in your views.
They never let us do colors.
What? I know. I remember Liz and I, like, in a call, like, 12 years ago, and somebody asked for a color, and we're like, nope, not possible.
Well, it's unsupported, is always the answer. Yeah, to do, like, conditional coloring.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and you
That's
can make
super
really
cool.
fun things, you guys can use your emoji keyboard too and put emojis into option sets and stuff now, so you don't have to just use words. So like you can use colors, you can use unicorns and poop emojis and hearts and smiles and whatever you might want to do. But
That's
I just love
cool.
it. It makes your views so much easier to interact with.
Are the colors tied to like the template, or is it completely part of like the option set value setting?
Oh no, like you can go into like your option set or your choice in the maker portal, and it literally gives you like the color picker that's like a rainbow and allows you to pick any color that you want. You can pick your option and pick any color with it. So you can do like red, blue, orange, magenta, lavender, like any shade of any color. And I will say that just test it out and don't get too excited. Make sure things are still like ADA compliant and that you can still read the black text, because you can't change the text color. So if you're using text, make sure you can still read it with the color that you're picking. But it makes it so much more fun to just look at views. And instead of reading words like high, medium, low, you can do like green, red, yellow, right? And then it stands out and just makes the user experience so much better.
That's fun.
We got really excited about that one.
Was it a good bonus surprise tip
Yeah,
for you?
I learned something new. I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, if you're watching this, Liz and I had awesome surprise faces. And if you're just listening, go back and watch just for that section, because we were very excited. Okay, so I'll do my last one and then we'll talk about the bonus. We're running real low on time here, so I'll go quick. My last tip is just use calculated and roll-up columns. I think that people tend to overlook them, or like me, can't do math. If you know what I'm talking about, you listen to our bonus episode. But basically, it's just simple arithmetic, right? Like, use your calculated columns, do the calculations for people. The last thing you want your salespeople having to do is like add up or do multiplication, trying to figure out their forecasts, things like that. So if and anywhere you want to like eliminate an Excel spreadsheet, use a calculated or a roll-up column for those. There are limits. I've heard some people using unsupported ways to get around that. The easiest way is obviously just create a joiner table, things like that. But absolutely use them. I think that they're underutilized, and I think that it's the easiest way to get rid of an Excel spreadsheet.
Love it. That's a fantastic one too.
Yeah.
So the bonus to get us to 10, although I feel like we've given, like Allie, you said, like we've given like tips inside of our tips. The last one, I'll make it quick and easy, but would love for you guys to share as well. I put this in there because it's so funny. We talked about this on a podcast, and one of my clients texted me as he was listening and was like, oh my gosh, I was just in a demo with Microsoft yesterday and this happened. And I was thinking to myself, like, you just talked about this, but business process flows, use them. Like, nobody ever actually does. I have to tell you, I sit on so many demos with Microsoft and they just make everything look so pretty and tie everything together. And then you get to implementation and they're always like, we don't need those, or it's too complicated, or you just never get around to it. You know, it's one of those things that gets cut. Liz, you look so excited. Go ahead.
I know. Finish, because I can tell you why people don't use them.
Okay, yeah, please do. But I think that they are extremely helpful. I really do, because if you first of all, it puts everything at the top of the form. You can create automation at the end of steps, in the middle of steps. You can branch things. You can literally put the process of how people are supposed to interact and do their job up in the business process flow, and you can forget about the rest of the form. I think it's highly valuable. So I think it's user-friendly. Now Liz is going to tell us to contradict everything that I just said. Go, Liz.
No, I also love them. I think the reason why they're not used is not at all a technology issue. It's the fact that people don't have a standard process.
Yeah, that's true.
And we forget process improvement as part of a CRM or Power Platform project. Like, we're there to implement technology, but if they don't have a consistent process, what do you put up there if everyone's doing it differently, or if leadership can't agree? And so it's like, that ability to have a pure business analyst role on at the beginning of the project to help them define, what is your process today? What do you want your process to be? And let's put that into the business process flow. Because people just don't have the time to figure that out. That's usually why I see them get cut. It's like, yeah, we want to use them, but we don't know. And this is too much work. We don't have the time.
Yeah. And I always say, and I know you guys, we've all said this, is that you can't you should not implement a CRM or any CRM-like technology without a business process. Like, your process should come first and the technology should support it. CRM should not be your process. And you're right, Liz. I totally agree with what you said. It's just that people don't take the time to do that step.
And it's a very important step too. And you can, I guess for a plug here too, you can always add in a business process flow later. So if you want to implement something and you want to circle back to finalize the process later internally or make changes to it, you can always add it on too. But it's a great way to onboard new employees too. So you bring someone on and you don't have to sit down and tell them the process. They can literally follow it. I do this, then I do this, then I do this. And it makes things so much more user-friendly.
That's such a good point, Allie. Like, it's never too late to add new things, right? Like, you don't have to have everything when you first go live. But that's a great phase 2, phase 3 item that you want to get to down the road. Just don't cut it. Like, if you're committed to it, actually do it. It's super helpful. But I agree, Allie. You don't have to have it all up front. So, yeah. All right. Any last minute tips you guys thought of? Or did
could we talk for 4 more hours on this? Probably. But I think final tally, we're at like 172 tips in this episode.
And we know because you were typing them out.
I want to ask the listeners if they have their own tips to please comment, right? Because we'd love to hear everyone else's tips too. Like, we know this wasn't an exhaustive list, so if you have your own tips, please comment. Thanks for tuning in to Dynamics Hotdish, your go-to podcast for all things Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to follow us on social media for even more insights and updates on the latest trends and best practices in business applications and low-code development. We'll be back soon with another delicious serving of Dynamics and Power Platform goodness. Until then, keep innovating and building great solutions.